Youth basketball is at a crossroads. Irate parents yelling from the stands, emotionally unstable coaches, and hoop dreams that once inspired are now becoming nightmares. Today on The Comprehensive Man, I'm honored to sit down with a longtime friend, coach, and author, Will Vance, a man who reminds us that basketball was never just about the game, but about the men it was meant to build. A call beyond the game.
Welcome to The Comprehensive Man.
Shalom, my brother.
Grace and peace, my brother.
Good seeing you. Finally, we had time to connect and talk. When is the last time I saw you, man?
That's a good question. I mean, we talked, but I can't think of the last time
You were working with little Jay in my backyard.
It's been that long?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how long it's been. And so it's good to see you, man. And I'm really proud of you for releasing your first book. And definitely this is a passionate subject of mine, The Call Beyond the Game, Discovering Basketball's Higher Calling, a coach's handbook by, of course, my brother Will Vance. And I'd love for you guys to check this out when you get an opportunity. First thing that came to mind, man, as I was just taking my notes from going through the book, and the call beyond the game. When did basketball for you become more than a game?
That's a great question. I would say approximately 1997 when I did an internship with Athletes in Action. So I toured with them nationally and internationally. And so
what is Athletes in Action? I know what they are, but for the people listening or watching who may not know, what is Athletes in Action?
Formerly Campus Crusade for Christ, but they're part of Crew Ministries now. So they're the athletic branch of Crew Ministry. They're the athletic branch.
And what do they do?
They're like probably the largest sports ministry in the world. So they tour nationally, internationally, basically using sports as a platform to preach, to present the gospel to the world.
And I love, brother, in your book, which I was aware of about James Naismith, but many do not know. They know he's the creator of basketball, but they don't know why he created the game. Would you mind sharing that with those who are listening now?
So he created basketball. He's from Canada, but he invented basketball when he moved here. So he was working with the YMCA. So his boss came to him and said, we need to come up with a sport, an indoor sport for the young people during the cold winter months. And they wanted to come up with a sport because back then the popular two sports was rugby and football. So the requirements was come up with a sport that's not violent. So James Naismith, that's when he came up with basketball. And I believe that he was inspired by God to come up with that. So it was a nonviolent sport and to teach discipline and character and self-control. So then they didn't just want to create a game, they want to create a game that can really shape and build young people spiritually, solically, and physically.
Is it true that he wanted to use the game also for evangelism? I heard that as well. Is that accurate?
That is very accurate. Yeah, that was in the latter years as it started to develop.
Wow, and it's deep, brother, to see how far the game has shifted from its original purpose to where it is now. Is that what really was the driving force behind you writing this book?
Yeah, it was. That was the driving force, and also just my personal experience, just being around the game and the impact that it had on my life. And once I became a follower of Christ, my whole perspective with basketball changed. There's a paradigm shift there.
Yeah, I noticed working here in the Cave of Adullam with boys, we have a lot of boys who want to play basketball. And I see the after effects of these young boys experiencing coaches with unresolved trauma, unresolved anger issues, experiencing hoop dreams that turned into nightmares. And then you see where they end up at in life when they get older. And it grieves me because, there is a great opportunity when a boy can play basketball and has opportunity to get a scholarship and go to college. But when I look at the stats, like this one here in 2023, there were 536,668 boys playing basketball in high school. And that same year, 19,275 of those high school boys played NCAA men's basketball.
Okay.
You dropped from over 500,000 to 19,000.
Yeah.
And then from 19,000, only 44 of those college basketball players were drafted in the NBA. And it reminds me of the brother who I call the godfather of black male development, Jawanza Kunjufu. He would always talk about how we need to look at the odds instead of just dreaming.
Yeah.
And how so many brothers spend their entire life chasing the goal of a game. And then if they don't make it, they're not prepared in society to even qualify for a job. You talk about communication and presence. And like you say, emotional regulation is how you manage yourself. Communication is how you lead others. And you're talking to coaches here. And the truth is this, the way you communicate reveals the condition of your emotions. A coach must develop the ability to teach and effectively communicate expectations clearly, calmly, and consistently.
Yeah.
This is what I like here. Yelling at players is counterproductive and often reveals a deeper issue within the coach and not the athlete. Unpack that for me, because in the cave of Adullam, of course, we teach them fortitude, discipline. When you're learning judo, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, even meditation, you have to lock in. And sometimes we have to raise our voice, but it's never in a way where it's counterproductive.
Right.
And I know you're speaking to the type of coach that his baseline for communication is yelling.
Yeah.
How is that counterproductive, and what does it reveal in the coach more so than the athlete?
You know, it's a red flag for a symptom that's going on in your spirit. If I'm in the heat of the battle in a game, and say, for example, referee, I feel he missed a call, and then the coach loses it and get a technical foul. Some people don't see that's a problem. They'll even say sometimes you have to do that. You have to get that technical foul to really spark your team. But I view it as a coach not having, or a person not having control of their own spirit. And it's almost like a child throwing a temper tantrum. That's what it looks like. You're breaking clipboards, you're knocking stuff off the scores table. And it's a lack of self-control, because it's counterproductive, because you're telling your players to keep a cool, calm head in the heat of the battle, but you're losing it in that same battle. But if you have, and I talk about this in the book, if you have a calmness about yourself, that flows to your team.
Absolutely.
It calms them down.
Absolutely. Even my son talked about that. You can feel it. And so it's so important that not only that he exudes what he's trying to teach the players, but it's also important for the coach to do the inner work needed to become this comprehensive, what I call a comprehensive coach, where he can stay calm but still be locked into what they call the battle of the game. I remember a college reached out, I said Big Ten team. One of the coaches reached out, basketball, he says, Mr. Book Wilson, we need you to come in and talk to our coaching staff. This was right before COVID. And I said, I'll be honored to, what's going on? He says, our coaching staff is unhealthy.
Wow.
And so when I thought about that, we couldn't meet because then 3 months later, COVID happened.
Okay.
And then after COVID, something happened within their coaching staff where everything imploded. And they lost everything.
Okay. As a coach, now you know me personally, so you know the trauma. Me and you share things with each other.
Yes.
So I've been through it.
Yeah, so let's start there. For instance, let's use you for an example. Do you mind if we talk about what you've been through?
No, I don't mind. No.
Yeah, so, I remember you told me, so when I first met you, when I gave my life to Christ, we met at Rosedale Baptist Church in Detroit, and you shared with me that you had been incarcerated for selling drugs. And I remember the story you told me when you received a letter from the government, when it said, the United States of America versus Willie Vance. You dropped to your knees, am I right? That's what you told me. Yeah, for sure. That's a real moment.
Yeah.
But for all that you've been through, what did it take for you to get where you are? Of course, we're going to say Christ is the foundation. That's what brought you the healing, brought you into the truth. led you down the paths that many we would have avoided if we were still in the streets.
Yeah.
So would you say that is the key? Because again, the title, The Call, Beyond the Game, would you say it was the call of Christ that led you down this narrow path that led to life, that leads to life?
Yeah, because I had no idea. But, as you get older and you learn to reflect and you learn to be aware of your surroundings, meaning like your daily activities, what's going on, the pitfalls, the peaks and the valleys, so when I started I looked back and I reflected on my life. I said, God is showing me something here.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I started to interact with different players, I have a parent say, I need you to talk to my son, blah, blah, blah. So I started recognizing that they were going through similar things that I went through at their age.
Mm-hmm.
So I can kind of tell that I can help them to navigate that process. I help the child, the player, and the parent to navigate that whole situation. And then I understood that coaching is about leadership.
That's good. We often say in the cave, mistakes are our greatest teachers. The only bad mistake is the one we don't learn from.
Yes.
Do you think it's a fear? Like I've seen coaches get upset more than the players when they lose a game.
Oh, yeah.
So, just like an athlete, that his identity becomes who he is on the court or on the football field, that's the same thing for a coach as well. So when he loses, it may trigger something in him from his childhood where he disappointed his father or his mother, or he wasn't good enough. And if a coach isn't taught how to really introspectively resolve those issues, it not only negatively impacts the spirit of the team, but his own body and his own mind, his own marriage, his own parenting. When did that transition happen? Did it happen when you went to prison or when you got out of prison? When did you surrender your life to Christ? I don't even know that to this day.
In prison.
In prison. How did that happen, brother?
There's a gentleman but he was there at the same time, but he told me, they have a church service. So I'm like, because I didn't grow up in the church, so I'm like, dude, I'm going to lift. I'm going to play some ball. Church, are you serious? It's like, y'all go to church, So one day he always asked me, so one time he said, Will, they got an outside church coming in and they got some pretty women. So I'm like, pretty women, so I went and it's packed. I conveniently sat all the way in the back and this preacher is preaching and he's just constantly establishing eye contact with me. I'm getting super uncomfortable. I want to just leave out. So my worst nightmare came true. He looked at me and said, young man, and I'm all the way in the back. This chapel is packed. He said, can you come here for a moment? So I look, he's like, you. So I got up and walked. So he leaned over and he whispered into my ear. He said, throughout this entire service, God has been telling me there's a war going on inside of you, but he's going to change that. So literally, so after I think the last day I was walking out the door. So this brother walks up to me. He's from Akron, Ohio. He walks up to me and said, I saw you gave your life to Christ. So you speaking foreign language to me. I'm like, I'm just agreeing with the dudes just so I can sit down. So he said, but there's more you need to know. We have a Bible study. So there were different units on the compound. So he said, what unit do you stay in? I said, Alexander. He said, oh, that's the same unit we stay in. He said, perfect. That gentleman, he taught me the Bible. And that's when I began to read. And I got to reading so much. He said that as you mature, you're not going to read as much. He said, everybody started out reading the Bible a lot. That was in 1992. I'll sometimes read the New Testament in a few days, the entire New Testament. I've read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. I can't just open up the Bible and read one or two chapters. At least I'm going to read several epistles. I need that to help me to maintain my focus.
Does it help you subdue the old Will? The Bible talks about we put off the old man.
Yes. Like I was my mom, she dealt with trauma in her life.
Yes.
So my grandmother raised me most of the time. So when my mom, like I was living in Wisconsin with my grandmother, my mom would come and visit, and sometimes I'll visit because she was living in Detroit. So she came to Wisconsin one time and got into it with my grandmother. So out of spite, she took me back to Detroit with her just to get at my grandmother. So
wow.
She would, it was ugly, so she would take her struggle, what she was dealing with out on me sometimes. My mom would, you know, crazy, physical, but and would yell at me, but like if I got in trouble with young people, you know, the Bible says foolishness is bounded up in the heart of a child, a rod of correction will drive it far from them.
Absolutely.
So to avoid getting in trouble, I just got sneakier.
Absolutely, yeah.
So one thing I learned is that when you truly have a conversion and you meet who the Christ is, some people say Jesus Christ, like Christ is his last name. That just means Messiah, right?
Right,
Jesus the Christ.
Yeah.
When you have interaction with him, your life will never be the same. Yeah. So now when I make mistakes or when I sin, I hear that like that's the importance of reading the Bible, because a lot of time God speaks through the scriptures that's in you already. Right. So he'll pull, be angry, but don't sin.
Right.
That soft voice would convict me. So what I found out is that my mom is physically punishing me for, you know, being a fool sometimes, but God is gently correcting me. Yeah. And that was a stronger conviction.
And that was even when you was a grown man, actually.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, you know, it's deep. You were talking about, you know, how your mother would discipline you physically or even verbally, you know, but it didn't change you, didn't change your heart. You just became sneakier to find ways, a better way not to get caught. And I would tell parents that often, you know, I've seen tough love fail repeatedly, but I've never seen love itself, the purest form, what the Bible talks about. I've never seen that fail.
That's deep.
And so I remember we were here one day training, and one of the fathers was just like, "Why don't you yell more at the boys?"
I've gotten that.
Yeah. And I said, "Why do I need to?" He was like, "Well, it worked for us." And I looked at him. I said, "Did it?" And he leaned back. He was like, "It didn't work for us." And it didn't, brother. And so I pulled up a couple of stats I had here. I keep it for parents when we work with, you know, their children in the cave. One study found that harsh verbal discipline, like yelling, shouting, or cursing at a child at age 13 or younger, predicted an increase in that child's depressive symptoms and conduct problems. Wow. Another study revealed that harsh yelling at children did not reduce bad behavior. It increased depression and conduct problems within a year. And the American Academy of Pediatrics says parents should not insult, humiliate, or shame children because that kind of verbal aggression is harmful and not corrective. And so we have the studies. We have the fruit of what happens, because you coach the boys. I coach the boys here as well. So that goes back again to the root issue, which is the coach as it relates to sports, and then the parents as it relates to raising a child at home. And that's why it stands out, the call beyond the game. I believe also coaches, again, first the foundation is Naismith created it for evangelism.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the foundation. That's why it was created.
Yes.
So it's far from that today, but it can get back there. But the key is the call. So as I think on that as well, so coaching is more than discipline. Coaching is also nurturing, which I've seen you do with my son very well. But for some reason, we believe nurturing is an attribute exclusive to women. But the greatest coaches were nurturers, martial artists, gardeners, anything where you're cultivating, whether it's a life, whether it's a plant, it is nurturing. It doesn't mean that, of course, our nurturing will look different from women, but young men and boys need men who can shift beyond what I call the first gear of manhood. So the first gear of manhood to me is just the masculinity, the strength, the boldness, the aggression, the toughness, the fortitude. We need that to get from stop to start. But if you stay in first gear, if you know anything about driving a stick shift, if you stay in first gear and try to go to 50, you're gonna burn your clutch out. Look what happened to so many men who stay in first gear in manhood. So many coaches get burned out. So many pastors the same way. And so I believe it's really important that they discover, like, really Naismith's true desire for the game. And I do believe most coaches, I believe most of them, and I could be wrong because you're more on the inside than I am, really want the best for the players. I would hope that's the case. Most of the coaches,
I agree.
You agree with that?
Yes.
would you agree that also what hinders them from, I guess, releasing their true heart desire is the fear that possibly the players could think they're soft and not respect them? There's a such thing as calm strength. But if you're a coach who have been conditioned and trained to yell, to be aggressive, to curse, to holler at their parents, their moms, you see that as well. Why would you shift from that?
Right.
You know, what would you suggest to a coach that's watching this right now or listening who wants to answer the call of the Most High and shift the way he coaches back to the original essence that Naismith created the game for, but just doesn't know how, may not have the courage because of his influence amongst coaches?
What's interesting is if you take John Wooden and Dean Smith, two of the winningest coaches in the history of college basketball, they modeled the blueprint from James Naismith. I watched a documentary. John Wooden's players, Dean Smith players said they never cursed at them, they never used profanity, they never yelled at them. They always had a calm demeanor. And once again, I reiterate, those are two of the winningest coaches in the history of college basketball. John Wooden not only won 10 championships, 7 of them were back-to-back. And that will never be done. Bill Walton, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar said John Wooden taught them more about life than basketball. Going back to a coach that coached at one of the PSL schools here in Detroit, I was talking to him about that, and he was telling me, you know, these bad kids we got in Detroit, man, you have to cuss them out sometimes to get their attention.
Right.
And I told him, I said, well, I understand what you're saying, but the same players that's on your varsity team that you're coaching, they play with me in the summer on the grassroots program. And I never cussed at them, and they run through a wall for me. Now, my thing is, I want people to understand I'm not naive. I can't force this philosophy or what James Naismith intended basketball to be on people.
Right.
Now, the call, just like the Bible says, many are called, but few are chosen. So it's the conscience. Everybody's your conscience won't lie unless it's seared like with a hot iron. Your conscience is no middle ground. It's going to tell you wrong or right. Any coach hearing this message, their conscience is going to let them know, okay, I need to start doing this. I need to start doing that, because that's how I change, and that's how I continuously change into the image of God, because we all were created in the image and the likeness of God.
Would you say it's your conscience, or was it the Holy Spirit?
Or both, the Holy Spirit communicating. That's what,
Yeah.
because the conscience is part of your
it's
spirit.
The beginning, yeah.
We're spiritual beings.
Yeah.
You know, just like in the soul, you know, that's the part, that's where the will and everything is.
Yes.
That's where deception can kick in.
There you
the
go.
spirit,
Yeah.
that's in constant communion with God. That's where the conscience is. There's no left or right, just straight here.
You know what's deep, brother? You talked about many are called, few are chosen. When I started the Cave of Adullam, you remember like Yakane and all? So them my guys, okay?
Yeah. Love
I
that.
tried my best to give it to him and others. I was just going to manage it. I didn't want the weight of teaching, training, and transforming boys. He says, you're chosen. You have to do it.
You were.
So coaching, in essence, it is a call,
Yes.
but then you're chosen.
Basketball has a huge influence on youth. It's like when you go into our neighborhoods and stuff, everybody wants to play. And me and you talked about this before the show. Stats show that 0.01% of college basketball players will make it to the NBA. And then what's the average lifespan of an NBA player?
It was 3 to 4 years, right?
Yes, 3 to 4, 3 to 5
And
years.
then after they retire, I believe it's over 60% filed for bankruptcy.
Yes, there's a documentary it was on 30/30 on ESPN called Broke. But people find it hard to believe that how can these guys make millions and millions of dollars and go broke?
That comes from, I believe, their entire life has been centered around performing and filling voids which need love from their father, love from their mothers, etc., with things, cars, watches,
Yes.
houses.
Yeah.
And they never find fulfillment in those things. And so that's what I believe leads to the bankruptcy. Then also what is heartrending, I had opportunity to meet with an NFL team, and it was a fatherhood forum I had to be a part of. and these two young players broke down crying because they no longer had their mothers. And what I mean by that is when they made the millions, they became like the leader of the entire family.
Yes. Very cool.
And so their mother became a dependent instead of them being able to depend on their mother. And I said, well, wait a minute, in all fairness to your mother, did you share this with your mom? And they said, no, we didn't, Mr. Wilson. I said, when I leave here, I want you to go share your heart with your mother. Tell her that you still need mama. Both of them did it. Both mothers received it. You know, because, you know, the mother didn't know, like, they think you made it. You good, you're a grown man. But you got a 22-year-old making millions. He don't know what to do.
No.
He's scared.
Yep.
And well, my mother, she was 83 when she died. I was 46 years old. And I still needed to lay my head on her chest some days. She had dementia. I'd be stressed out. She couldn't really communicate as much. But she understood the heaviness of what I was going through.
Yes.
So you have these players missing that. And then to, you know, the call, the coach. When I talk to these coaches, even all sports, hurting, you know, and that's why I hope they would pick up this book. And then I also love the reflection and applications.
Yeah.
In each, at the end of each chapter, which is really good. Then you have a section where they can write. Like for instance, here you say, reflect, is my playbook simple, clear, and appropriate for the age and skill level of my team? The second one, you have reflect, and you have run the play.
Yes.
Choose one play to refine or one unnecessary play to remove from your system this week. And then you have team huddle. Ask your players, students, or family, how does clarity help us perform better, and what happens when we overcomplicate things? What I love about this, Will, is that for a coach to do these things, he has to be willing to always evolve or to pivot on what doesn't work. Kajala Sesaweo was one of my martial art instructors, and he had a sign on the door before you walk out onto the floor. It was for the instructors.
Okay.
It said, if the student didn't learn, the teacher didn't teach.
Wow. Yeah.
Even in the cave, I always reflect on what did I do or what didn't I do?
Yes.
Because if he didn't pass, what didn't I teach him? Or if I taught him, was it plain enough where he could receive it? How do you get a coach to move past his own pride to say, okay, yeah, you missed that shot or you blew that assignment? How do you convey that to a player in that moment where it doesn't make the player drop his head, if you know what I mean by that? How do you keep him encouraged by also holding him accountable, but also holding yourself accountable as well?
Yeah, you said pride, that's the whole key thing, because that pride is a monster. We know that stuff. That's really the first sin, pride. As a coach, and I got this in the book, you can't teach what you don't know. That's one thing I say, you can't teach what you don't know. Some coaches, not just pride for their arrogance, you know, arrogance is closely related to pride. Would you say they go together, they intertwine?
I would say one births the other.
Okay, so pride births arrogance. Okay.
I would say so.
Yeah. You know, so, and that's the thing, it's like experience. Because if they haven't really gone through that, if pride blocked them from being corrected. Because I heard a preacher say this not long ago. He told me, he said, I don't think God speaks to people anymore. You know, this is a preacher of a church, you know, and I said, well, I respectfully disagree with that, because God speaks to me very often, and it's usually correcting me. It's usually correct. But most of us, we don't want to hear that. We're mature adults, but there's always room for improvement.
Absolutely.
But if I don't accept that, then it's going to be hard for me to truthfully teach that to a young person.
And this will be my last question, because you talked about emotional regulation. How can a coach honor a player's emotions meaning allow him to be emotional without telling him to always suck it up. Now, in the heat of in the game, right? You're playing, like I tell my boys, there's a time for everything, like Solomon teaches us. We call it a moment on the mat in here.
Okay.
But you can't have that moment on the mat at the wrong time.
Right.
You see your player, he's angry. I call that the service emotion. That's our go-to as men. If we sad, we angry. We depressed, we angry. You get it? So we can easily express that one because it's safe.
Yeah.
But the emotions underneath that, how do you help a coach help his players, or teach a coach to help his players to always look at the deeper issue, the why behind the way he's acting, so that that student will, or that player would learn in the moments of a game how to process what he's feeling, how to release what he's feeling, and reset in the moment. So everyone, this book is called The Call Beyond the Game, subtitle Discovering Basketball's Higher Calling. And it's written by Will Vance. And I encourage you, all of you who invest thousands of dollars in your son's basketball career, whether it's in middle school, high school, or college, encourage you to get this book, read it, and they can even reach out to you, right, for personal coaching as well, private coaching. Where can people reach out to you?
My website is thebasketballsociety.com. My email is will@thebasketballsociety.com.
What's your social media handle?
Real Will Vance for both.
Real Will Vance.
Yeah, Will Vance.
And you're on Instagram, I know. Are you on Facebook?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook.
Are you on X or Twitter?
I am on X,
Okay.
the Real Will Vance. on
Okay,
X.
awesome. Great.
Yep.
But thank you, brother. Always good
You're
to
welcome.
catch up. And again, I'm proud of you, man, and keep shining your light, brother, in a sport that really needs coaches and men like you.